The cold wasn't enough to freeze the pain inside me. When I returned home, I checked my phone one more time. No new messages. I didn't know why I thought he would suddenly change his mind, but I couldn't help but wait. Then another notification. This time, it wasn't from him. It was from his brother. The message was brief. "He's serious about her. Please don't do anything that might make it worse. He's finally found someone who makes him happy." I stood frozen, my heart sinking to the pit of my stomach. So this was it. It was real. He was serious about her. My mind raced with the bitter realization that he had moved on while I was still here, grasping at the remnants of a life we once had. It felt like a knife twisting deeper inside me, but I knew one thing for certain: there was no going back. The silence was louder now, heavier than ever. I had asked for a separation, and now I was truly alone. But something inside me refused to give up. I wouldn't let him dictate my worth anymore. It was time to take control, to find out who I really was, and stop waiting for him to care about me. This chapter of my life had ended, and I was finally starting to accept that I needed to move on. Memory to him? The minutes felt like hours as I stared at my phone waiting for his response. My fingers were trembling and my stomach was tied in knots. I had no idea what I expected. Maybe a long, heartfelt explanation, or perhaps an apology for all the pain he had caused. But deep down, I knew that wouldn't come. I had seen the truth in his actions. Words were just empty now. Finally, the screen lit up with a notification. It was from him. My heart skipped a beat as I opened the message. His reply was short, almost distant. "Please don't make this worse. I never meant for things to turn out like this." It was all I could do to stop myself from throwing my phone across the room. He never meant for things to turn out like this? That was all? He hadn't meant for me to find out. That's what it boiled down to. And now here he was, trying to minimize everything, as if it was just some unfortunate misunderstanding. My blood boiled, but I forced myself to stay calm. I responded, my words sharp but controlled. "You never meant for things to turn out like this. Then why did you lie to me? Why did you keep everything from me if you cared about me at all?" I paused before hitting send, unsure whether I even wanted an answer, but I couldn't help myself. The hurt, the betrayal, it all poured out in that one message. He had been living this double life, smiling with her, while all the while he had been telling me that everything was fine, that I was overreacting. The realization that he had been lying for so long was suffocating. Minutes passed, then an hour. He didn't respond. I kept looking at my phone, praying for something more, something that could explain why everything had fallen apart. But nothing came. I started to wonder if this was just it, if this was the final act in a play I didn't even know I was part of. The silence between us felt heavier than ever before. That night, I tried to distract myself. I went for a walk in the cold air, hoping the sharp wind would clear my mind, but the thoughts kept swirling. How could I have been so blind? Had I really not seen the signs? Or was I just too scared to face the truth until it slapped me in the face? I replayed everything. The late nights he came home, the way he stopped talking to me, the distance in his eyes. And I remembered the one time I asked him directly, "Are you seeing someone else?" He had laughed it off, told me I was imagining things. How could I have been so stupid? Warm, but now it seemed like it had all been a lie. A mask he wore until he could find a way out. I didn't want to confront him again. I didn't want to hear him beg for mercy or try to justify his actions. I had heard enough. But as the days dragged on, I began to realize something. I had to find a way to make sense of this. I couldn't just move on without understanding why he had done this, why he had thrown away everything we had. Was it because of her? Was it me? Or had he been planning this all along? I kept thinking back to the times we had spent together, the moments that had seemed so perfect. How had I missed the signs? I'd been so focused on the idea of us, of making it work, that I had blinded myself to the truth. And now it was too late. He had moved on, and I was left behind, trying to pick up the shattered pieces of my heart. One evening, after another long day of trying to distract myself with work, I found myself scrolling through Instagram again. I didn't know why I did it. Maybe it was to see if he had posted anything new, or maybe I was just looking for some sort of closure that I knew wouldn't come. But then, something caught my eye. His account. It wasn't much, just a single post, but it was enough to stop me in my tracks. It was a photo of them, him and her. They were sitting at a table, a soft glow of candlelight casting shadows on their faces. He was smiling in a way I hadn't seen in months, genuinely without a care in the world. She was smiling too, her hand resting on his. I felt a rush of nausea, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the image. They looked happy, too happy. It was the kind of happiness I had once imagined for us, the kind I had wanted to believe we could get back. But now I saw it for what it was, the reality of my failure. I tried to move past the post, to scroll away, but something in me snapped. I couldn't just accept this. I had to confront him again. Not for closure, not for answers, but because I needed to know, what the hell was he thinking? With shaking hands, I typed a message. I knew it was risky, that I was opening up a wound that might never heal, but I couldn't stop myself. I asked him straight out, how could you do this to me? After everything, how could you just move on like I didn't matter? I hit send and waited, my breath caught in my throat. The message hung in the air, suspended as I stared at the screen. Would he respond? Would he even care? Or had I truly become nothing more than a distant... I paused. His words echoed in my ears, the pieces finally coming together. That woman. The one in the video. It was my boss. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. My own husband had been seeing her. The woman I worked for. The one who had always been so distant, so professional with me. She had been his secret for weeks. He had been seeing her for at least 2 months. Just a couple of weeks after I asked him to move out. I felt sick to my stomach. How could he do this? How could he lie to my face all this time, telling me everything was fine while he was hiding a relationship with the very woman I had worked under? The shock of it nearly made me drop the phone. He continued to beg me not to ruin his new relationship, claiming how happy he was and that I shouldn't stand in the way of his happiness. The words felt like knives. His happiness? Wasn't I the one who deserved to be happy? Wasn't I the one who had been fighting for something real, only to find out that he had been building something else entirely behind my back? I hung up, the phone slipping from my hand as tears began to spill down my face. What had I done? Was I too hasty? Had I made the right decision by letting him go, or had I just handed him the freedom to destroy everything? The days that followed felt like a blur of emotions, each moment blurring into the next. I couldn't escape the thought of him, of his lies, of his betrayal. The worst part was knowing he was now with her, the woman I had worked for, the woman who was supposed to be a mentor. The thought of him with her made my stomach churn. I couldn't help but replay his words in my mind over and over again. Please don't ruin this for me. It haunted me. How had he gotten so far from us, from me? I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, my mind would race with images of him with her, of their hands entwined, of the way he looked at her in that video. I couldn't comprehend how he could go from being the man I thought I knew to someone who was willing to betray me in the most intimate way. He had always been affectionate. The sessions turned into something I dreaded, rather than something that gave me hope. I was alone, talking to a counselor who was kind, but whose words couldn't fill the void left by his absence. It was becoming more and more clear. He wasn't interested in working on this. He wasn't interested in us anymore. And that realization hurt more than anything. The silence that stretched between us wasn't just because he wasn't physically there, it was because emotionally, he had already checked out. One particular week, he didn't show up at all. I waited in the counselor's office, heart sinking with every passing minute, until the therapist finally suggested I go home. I remember walking to my car in a daze, the weight of his indifference crushing me. I wanted to scream, to break something, but instead I sat in the parking lot, staring at the steering wheel, not knowing what to do next. In the following days, things only got worse. There were no texts, no calls, no signs of life from him. He had disappeared. And the more time passed, the more I was forced to confront a truth I had been avoiding. He wasn't coming back. It wasn't just that he was indifferent, he was actively avoiding me, actively avoiding the reality of what we had become. I would be lying if I said I wasn't devastated. It felt like I was living in a parallel universe where everything was falling apart, and I was helpless to stop it. I tried to fill the void by focusing on work, but even that wasn't enough to distract me. My job became a refuge of sorts, but it also made everything feel more distant. I worked long hours, burying myself in my tasks, but when the day ended, I would come home to an empty house, to silence. The silence was the hardest part. And yet, even though my heart was breaking, there was something in me that knew this was the right decision. Deep down, I knew I was doing the right thing by giving myself the space to heal, to find out who I was without him. But the uncertainty of it all, the not knowing what came next, kept me on edge, kept me questioning if I had made the right choice. I had no idea how this would end, or if it would ever end, but for the first time in weeks, I knew one thing for sure. The distance between us wasn't just physical, it was emotional, and it was permanent. It had been weeks since we had stopped trying, and yet, I couldn't fully let go. Despite everything, I still had a deep love for him, and that was what made the emptiness even harder to bear. I told Ike. We sat in silence for a few minutes before he spoke again, his voice soft, hesitant. He said he would move out, stay with his brother for a while. His eyes avoided mine as he said it, almost as if he was relieved, as if he was secretly grateful for the space. I could tell that it wasn't just the separation that troubled him. It was the fact that I was finally seeing through him. I didn't need to say more. I knew he didn't want to admit what was really happening, what he was hiding. But I couldn't unsee it anymore. That night, I sat alone, staring out of the window, feeling a mixture of sadness and strange relief. I had been thinking about it for so long, and now it was real. I was free to focus on myself, to stop pretending everything was fine. But deep down, a dark knot twisted in my stomach. It wasn't over yet. The truth was still out there, waiting to be uncovered. The weeks after I asked for the separation were a blur of pain, confusion, and a growing sense of emptiness. I had hoped that with time, things would start to make sense, that somehow the space we took would help us rediscover each other. But that wasn't happening. It wasn't just the silence that weighed on me, though that was bad enough. It was his complete reluctance to engage in anything that might help fix the damage. We had agreed to try couples counseling, a final attempt to salvage something from the wreckage. For the first few sessions, it felt like we were on the same page. He was attentive, almost apologetic, as if he was genuinely trying. I wanted to believe that maybe we could work things out, that the distance between us could be bridged. But it didn't take long for me to realize that the facade was just that, a facade. Every week I would show up to the sessions, waiting for him, hoping that he would show up too. And for a while, he did. He'd sit there, nodding, occasionally offering a word or two, but it was clear he wasn't really present. He started canceling last minute, making excuses that seemed thinner and thinner as time passed. First, it was, I have to work late. Then it was, I'm just too tired. As the weeks dragged on, I could feel him slipping further away from me, from us. I can't stop thinking about what just happened. Just a few months ago, I decided to ask my husband for a separation, feeling like my heart couldn't take it anymore, and my intuition told me he wasn't fully mine. But I never imagined that what I suspected would turn out to be true. Why would he do this, and why her, of all people? These questions keep swirling in my mind, yet the answers seem impossible to find. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. For weeks, the gnawing suspicion in my chest grew louder and louder, even though everything appeared normal on the surface. My husband and I had been together for years, but something had changed. He wasn't the same, and neither was I. My intuition, which I had ignored for so long, finally became undeniable. I had to face it. My heart couldn't take it anymore. I wasn't imagining things. I could feel that he wasn't fully mine, and the weight of it was becoming unbearable. It was a night like any other when I finally decided I couldn't keep pretending. I had tried to brush it off, telling myself it was just a phase, that we could get through it. But deep down I knew I had been making excuses for him. I wasn't crazy, and I wasn't being paranoid. I was just trying to convince myself that I wasn't losing the person I loved. The nagging thoughts about him being distant, always distracted, the way his eyes seemed to linger elsewhere when we were together, it all came to a breaking point. I could no longer ignore what my gut was screaming at me, so I did something that felt like it was ripping my heart out. I asked him for a separation. The words felt foreign as they left my lips. I wasn't prepared for the way he would react, but I had to do it. I needed space. I needed clarity. The suffocating uncertainty was killing me, and it wasn't just his behavior. It was how I felt in the relationship, how lost and disconnected I had become. I couldn't continue to live like. He didn't understand at first. His confusion was palpable, his face pale as he tried to grasp the reality of my words. He told me I was making a mistake, that I was overreacting, that I was blowing things out of proportion. He called it a mountain out of a molehill. Classic, I thought. That's always how it goes, doesn't it? The one who's hurt is the one accused of being irrational. But in that moment, I didn't care about his excuses. I had made up my mind.